Student engagement is an important part of the learning process. If you have ever lectured in class, you have found that some students check out, and it is not always clear to see how well students understand what you are presenting. Pear Deck is an application that you can use to solve some of these problems. Once installed, you can create opportunities for students to interact with your presentation and check for their understanding. This is a premium service, and GUHSD has paid for all school accounts to be able to use this. Students are also able to create and make presentations with their accounts. In this webinar, we will ensure that your account is properly set up to use this tool. We will also go through the process of creating a Pear Deck presentation and go over the process of presenting and managing your Pear Deck. The purpose of this is to give you a working familiarity of Pear Deck before you meet with your digital learning coach as part of the Trailblazer program. You need to take care of some initial setup in two places, peardeck.com and Google Slides. This will need to be done only once. Please go ahead and click on the link for peardeck.com. Now that you have gone to peardeck.com, please select Teacher Login. If you are prompted to select an account, make sure it's your GUHSD account. In the top right-hand corner, you'll see your email address, your avatar, and a little crown on top of this. It means that you have the premium account. You'll see a little drop box. Please select it and go to My Account. What we will do now is go over to Settings. And we're going to do a few one-time setup items. You may use these features or you may not. If you have it set, at least it's there for you to use if you'd like it. The first item is Google Classroom. You may choose to have students access Pear Deck via Google Classroom, which may be a place where you have them do their work anyways. If so, turn it on. If you find that you don't really use Google Classroom in this way, then you can go ahead and keep it off. The second item is Classroom Climate. When students start their presentation, they're automatically going to be asked how they're feeling. The idea is to get students thinking about their work and thinking about how they feel about it, and it gives you some feedback as well as far as the mood of the class. You can choose between mood and or feedback, so you can select whatever you'd like. Finally, you have takeaways. When you're done with your presentation, what will happen is takeaways will publish a Google document of every single slide that you presented, as well as for each individual student, their responses to those slides. Please note that this will not give students right or wrong answers, so students may need to check and look at their work a little bit later on. However, you can now use your presentations and their feedback and their input as part of further assignments if you'd like to use this. Once these items are all set up, we will move on to Sessions, which is located at the very top. When you begin presenting your Pear Deck, it will actually be presented from within this site. You will see a date and a time when something has been presented. You'll see a status of the presentation, and you'll see some other information here too. Please note that there are some things that are called unnamed sessions. When you close a presentation, you have the option to name it. Since you will likely be making the same presentation several times a day, include something like the date and the class period in the session title. That way, it's easier for you to find your particular presentations for a particular class. You'll notice some icons to the right of everything. The first one is Classroom View. If you'd like to, you can actually resume a presentation. Say maybe you got almost done with a period 2 class and you want to come back to it the next day. All you would have to do is go to peardeck.com, click on it, and it'll be right back where you started from. It saves all the information for the students from the previous day. The next icon is going to be the teacher dashboard. What you can do is go back to any presentation that you've done with a class, and you can see whatever the student responses were for any of the slides where you asked for it. So maybe you want to review something that came up in a previous day or something that happened last week because you're thinking about it. Well, now you can see this work. Lastly, these 3 dots will give you more choices. You could choose to turn on the student paced portion of Pear Deck. What this means is students can go at their pace and they can go ahead and respond to and interact with your presentation. This may be useful as a homework assignment. This might be a good way for students who are absent to at least be a part of what you had presented to the class. Or this might be a good time for a review, where maybe you give students 5 or 10 minutes to go through the presentation, you lock it down, and then you go forward and talk. You could also choose to formally end the session, so that way it would be completely done. So in this case, it's live, and it would be turned closed. You can also choose to name the session. So right now it's Untitled, so I can call it like period 2 on March 4th or whatever. Or you could also choose to archive it. These settings are available in the peardeck.com. If you'd like to pause the video right now to make sure that everything we've gone over is done, please go ahead and do so. If not, we will continue. The other portion of our Pear Deck setup is actually working in Google Drive itself. More particularly, we'll be looking at Google Slides. So if you would, go ahead and open up an existing slide deck or create a blank one. Either way, it doesn't matter. Pear Deck is an add-on in Google Drive that will allow you to do more with your Google Slides. Like the name suggests, an add-on allows you to do more with an existing tool. If you'd like to convert and upload an existing PowerPoint presentation into Google Slides, you may do so and then use them in Pear Deck. In order to make sure that things are set up properly, we should be able to go to Add-ons, see Pear Deck, and then open the Pear Deck add-on. I already have mine open, so you can see this here in the right sidebar. If for whatever reason you do not see Pear Deck as an add-on, simply go to Add-ons, Get Add-ons, and then search for Pear Deck. If it's not installed, you would see an icon like this, plus free. Go ahead and click on that for Pear Deck, otherwise it'll say Manage in green. Please go ahead and make sure this is installed before you move on to the next portion of our presentation. Now that you have taken care of the basic account setup, let's move on to actually making a presentation in Pear Deck. You may use an existing Google slide deck, you may convert an existing PowerPoint slide deck to Google Slides, or you can simply build from scratch. We found, though, of course, that when you make Pear Deck, you need to cut out some content. For this reason, we recommend that you make a copy of a presentation that you'd like to use, so that way if something is deleted or changed, you haven't lost your original. Since student interaction and feedback is an important part of Pear Deck, you will not have the same amount of time that you would normally have for your presentation. Based on our experiences, we found that roughly a third of the class time will be used to get students signed in and participating in class. You may also wish to use student responses to drive your presentation, and this takes time too. In your design, consider your purposes or goals for the presentation itself. Perhaps you will break this presentation into two smaller parts, or may focus on a particular skill development for students to practice in the presentation. Pacing is important, and you may find that having a question every 4 to 5 slides keeps students engaged without being overwhelming for them. In order to prepare a Pear Deck presentation, open the slide deck and then select Add-ons, Pear Deck, and open Pear Deck add-on. You'll see a sidebar at the right-hand side of the screen, which will be used to develop the interactive experience. Similarly, you will present your Pear Deck through this add-on. Simply hitting present like you normally would in slides will not run the student interactive opportunities that you're creating. Within the sidebar, you will also notice color blocks and circle icons. These represent different types of interactives that you can include in your Pear Deck. The color blocks will insert brand new slides into your deck. All text in these templates can be customized. For example, world language teachers may wish for the text to be in Spanish instead of English. Perhaps you would like to include different terms for the choices. This can be done easily. The green block has templates for deeper thinking prompts. These can be useful in helping students develop arguments or counter-arguments for topics, synthesize their thinkings, or bring in outside ideas. These also can be very good for bell ringers. The custom question circles represent different types of interactive questions. Clicking on one of these icons will place the footer at your existing slide, which will make the slide appropriately interactive. Please ensure that all instructions, prompts, and everything else are on the slide itself. These custom questions provide the appropriate text box, multiple choice options, or manipulables for the students. The students do need the instructions on the slide in order to know what to do. Now that you have a basic overview of the types of questions that can be asked, we'll go into more detail about the types of things that you can add to your presentation. For instance, you may choose to have a text question. What will happen on the screen is a student will see your slide, and then they'll have a sidebar that you won't have where they can type in the response. On the teacher dashboard, you'll be able to see the student responses. For the multiple choice, you'll provide the prompt or the question on your slide, and then a student will have a sidebar of the different choices with whatever you had chosen to type in. Now, when you first do your editing and you add this in, you'll have a pop-up that will show what your choices are. You'll find, though, if you want to go back and edit it, you actually need to go to the speaker's notes at the bottom of the slide in order to edit it going forward. The third type of interactive is website. So what you can do here is actually have students go to a link, and maybe you have a simulation or a model or some sort of an interactive website where you want students to practice a particular topic or a particular skill. What you can do is actually provide students a link to it. They can interact with the site, and then they can type in some sort of answer or response as you want them to do on the sidebar. You can then use that site as a discussion piece as part of your presentation. If you want students to give you a number answer, you would then, of course, have the question or the prompt on the screen, and then a space for them to type in their response. It'll provide a number bar of all the different responses that students have given. If you'd like students to draw on a slide, so maybe you have a matching activity, or you want them to label something, or maybe you want them to highlight or circle keywords in a text selection that you have in your slide, students can use the draw tool to do this. As a teacher, you'll be able to see what all the students have marked up on that text or that picture, or whatever the manipulable is that you want them to have. The draggable will allow you to use different kinds of colored icons on your slide. Students can then move them in a place that's appropriate. So for example, if you're doing a geography class, maybe you want students to move markers to appropriate countries. If you're looking at some sort of art analysis and you're looking at symbolism, well, maybe they can move different types of markers to different things within the image. If you're looking at literacy development, you could have students move markers to various parts of the text using whatever skill or filter you're looking for with your class. Now that you've had a quick tour of the different types of interactive questions and slides you can use in Pear Deck, this would be a good time to test it out. Try inserting some of the templates into your slide deck and see what you like about them. Try editing them for the text that you like better. For some of the actual multiple choice questions and the draggables, go ahead and see how it works for you and ensure that you have some instructions in there. You'll notice some tiles will be popping up here for some help videos to help you guide your process. Please go ahead and use those, and then resume the process when you're ready to go. Once you've had the opportunity to set up your Pear Deck, you're ready to go. Please note, in order to present in Pear Deck as an interactive experience, you'll need to use the add-on itself, and there's a green button that says Present with Pear Deck. What will happen is we'll take that presentation and jump things over to peardeck.com, where you'll be administering your session and you'll be keeping your information. We took care of the setup of peardeck.com at the beginning of this webinar. When you physically get set up for your day, you'll be hooking your device up to your projector like you normally would. What may be different for you is that instead of mirroring your display to your projector, meaning that your projector and your desktop are looking the same thing, we'll be extending your desktop to the projector, and your projector will basically be a second monitor. In order to get that set up and understand what that means, please click on the resource document link that's in this slide. When we're ready to go, what will happen is we'll click on Present with Pear Deck. This will be a green button within the add-on. This will give you all the bells and whistles and interactive experience. If simply select Present like you normally would with a slide deck, well, then you're just going to have the PowerPoint that you normally would be doing. Ensure that your add-on is installed and open, and click on Present Lesson. It'll take a moment for everything to load, and what will happen now is peardeck.com will be the host that's actually guiding this whole experience. A pop-up will appear, and it'll instruct your students to go to joinpd.com, and it'll give them a 5-letter code. Students can then go ahead and join. In the bottom left, you'll see how many students have joined, so just keep an eye on that. And then you'll also notice where it says Open Teacher Dashboard. I'll show you what that looks like in just a moment, but when you click and open this, you'll drag this back to your desktop, and you'll be able to administer and run everything with your class. While that's going on, you'll be able to then present and interact with the students. This code will always be in the top right-hand corner, so if a student does come in late for whatever reason, the student can join and jump into the presentation wherever you might be. While you're actually presenting, you're going to be seeing a teacher presentation tool in the bottom of your screen. You can be able to see which slides you're on. If you have any notes that you wanted to type in, you'll be able to see it on your screen, but the students won't see it projected. You'll be able to get an idea of how many students have responded to whatever question that you've had. You'll be able to show the responses on the screen, which means that at this point in the teacher dashboard, you'll see every response that a student is making with their name on it, but the students won't see it. There'll be a little hollow star next to each student's name, and if you choose to click those, you then present only the presentation or the answers that you want students to see. So maybe you want to choose a really good answer, an okay answer, and one that needs improvement. When you choose to show the responses, it will not show a student's name. It will only show a response. So that way you can constructively talk about work without really putting a student into an embarrassing situation. You have the ability to lock a screen. So when there is a time to interact, students might be jumping in without really listening to the instructions. By locking the screen, you put them on pause, and then that way they can't type until you're ready for them to do so. In the little corner, there's actually a little triangle, and if you click on this, it'll give a timer of 30 seconds, a minute, and 3 minutes. And so when time's up, the time is up, and this can also help you move things around. If you'd like to do a question on the fly based on a presentation, you can click on the new question. And then when you're completely done with your presentation, you can choose to end it. The dashboard is a really useful tool, so that way you can see what students are thinking and what they're doing. And here's some views of what it would look like. Say, for instance, you had a slide with a multiple choice or a short answer. You'll be able to see those students' responses. If you'd like to share it, you can go ahead and click the star. You could also have a view where if every single student has a tile on a screen. This could be a useful way for you to see how students are doing. If students are doing any kind of drawing and interacting, you can see all the student responses all together using this little stacked diamond icon. So this way you can get a whole class view of how a class is interacting with a text or a reading or a picture, which could be useful too. When you are completely done and you want to end your session, you would go ahead and name the session. Here's where you want to make sure you put in maybe the class period or the date, so that way you know which version of this presentation is which. And when you're completely done, you can also choose to publish the student takeaways. What that means is students will get an email of a Google document with all the slides that you have in your presentation, along with their responses. In a big class of 38, this might take 15, 20 minutes before they receive it because it needs to be processed. So this could be a good way to send students home with a presentation and then come back with that sitting in their inbox so that way they can access it. The Pear Deck website would be a place for you to go back and check out the sessions. So you just go to peardeck.com and sign in. You click on sessions and you'll be able to see the different types of things that you had. So maybe with this Spanish block 1, maybe you didn't finish the presentation. You can go ahead and reopen it. Student data is saved. You can go back to the dashboard where maybe a student in the middle of the period yesterday had an interesting take on a question that you had and you want to go back and review it a little bit. You can do that too. If you want to get a better feel for how students were doing in one class with this particular type of problem, you can check it out here as well. If you'd like to use the additional things like the student paste, you can go ahead and click that in this 3-dot area. Another way for you to access your Pear Deck lessons is actually in your Google Drive. In Drive, you'll see a folder that's called Pear Deck, and when you click on it, you'll be able to see some subfolders for things like takeaways, vocabulary lists, presentations, and exports. By clicking on these subfolders, you'll be able to get back to what you were looking for in order to present it or edit it later. Another thing that you can use Pear Deck for is vocabulary development, and what Pear Deck calls it is Flashcard Factory. What will happen is you create a list of vocabulary terms and a basic definition, and then when students sign into Pear Deck, what they're going to do is they're going to be teamed up into a day shift or a night shift. Pear Deck will automatically jigsaw the students into smaller groups. What will happen is students will be provided the definition and the term, and then they'll be asked to do one of two things. They'll be provided to provide some sort of a statement using the term or the idea, or they'll be asked to make some sort of an illustration. And the way that the jigsawing works is that students will be doing, say, the sentence for one term and then an illustration for another, so it's collaborative the way that it's built. When the flashcards are actually created, what will happen is it will drop it on this little conveyor belt, and then as a teacher, you'll go through and you'll vet the cards and see if the illustrations and sentences look good for the terms that you have. When you approve it, you'll actually give the shift a point, and if you disapprove it, they won't. So there's a little bit of a game element in it. And then ultimately, when it's all said and done, you can actually export your slide decks to Quizlet. So students can actually use Quizlet or a study tool using partially something that they help create and use. So it's a nice way to interact and have students do some work with vocabulary. If you'd like to learn more about it, there's a video that you can watch, so check it out. The basic overview of a Flashcard Factory is here. You go to peardeck.com and start your list and enter them in. We've also found that if you do already have a document of vocabulary, and maybe it's tabbed over where you have the term and then a tab and a definition, you can copy and paste that list straight into Pear Deck and it'll automatically know what to do with everything. So this could be a really good way to shake it up a little bit. This could be a good 30-35 minute activity if you're doing 10 terms or something like that. So as we get moving, there's going to be a lot of resources that are available to you. So to make it happen, there's an implementation guide that you can check out and use that on demand. There are some things that are available for the laptop setups about the presentation, as well as in the Vault, we have some things with Pear Deck. Ideas of how to use it in the classroom, a lot of videos, a lot of how-to guides. So now it's time to get moving. In the Get Setup portion of this slide, we've taken care of the webinar. That's what you're finishing right now. Please feel free to come back to it as you need to get some more input or some ideas about how things work. At peardeck.com, you've taken care of the 3 basic setups for your account. And we've also done the add-on within Google Slides, so that way you can build your slide decks into something that's more interactive. For the Reflect portion, we're going to ask you to think about the levels of use for Pear Deck. What do you do with it? What would you like to do with it? And how can we build those as goals? There's also going to be a planning and a reflection guide, which you'll be maintaining throughout this process, where you'll be thinking about what you know, what you'd like to develop, and as you make lessons, what worked and what you'd like to improve upon. And we'll also need to make sure that there's going to be a meeting set up with the DLCs, so that way everything's moving in the right direction. If you have some early questions or frustrations with the technology, we can take care of it before it starts getting more and more frustrating for you as a teacher. To go along with this, we have the Google Classroom that's been set up. And you're going to be noticing some headings. The first one is the Trailblazer process, which again has a link back to the webinar which you're watching, so you can come back to it whenever you like. There's going to be a reflection document, which you're going to have a personal copy of. We'll ask that you type in your responses and your thoughts, your planning and your ideas. And also when you meet with the DLCs, we'll be putting some information in there as well. For each of the 3 lessons that you submit, there's a lesson tracker. And so we'll ask you to fill out this form and give us a link to the slide deck that you made. Please do ensure that anyone with a link can view it. If you need more help getting into Pear Deck and doing things later on, please use the resources that we provided here. We have a link back to the GUHSDtech Vault, which has a lot of great information about how to set up, how to create and make, how to use your projectors, and also some links back to Pear Deck itself. And the same idea with Flashcard Factory. You have everything you need here, and we look forward to seeing what you'll create and make, and good luck.